Welcome to this edition of InsurTech Talk, brought to you by Avast. Our hosts today are Kitty Ambers, Chief Growth Officer at Avast, and George Robertson, Business Development Consultant and Authority on Insurance Technology. Kitty and George will share the 5 fundamentals for embracing InsurTech. Now, here are your hosts, Kitty Ambers and George Robertson.
Welcome, and thank you so much for joining us today for InsurTech Talk. My name is Kitty Ambers, and in my more than 3 decades in the insurance industry, I have worn many hats, including time in our family-owned agency, at a carrier, as a teacher, trainer, and consultant, as an association executive, and currently as the Chief Growth Officer for Avast, an InsurTech startup. And we're very happy to be hosting this presentation today. It's been a fantastic ride for me and an amazing opportunity to exercise my belief in lifelong learning. I believe in our industry with a passion, and I believe that the only constant is change. I'm hopeful that by sharing my experiences, I can help our audience by providing practical and actionable tips for embracing change and for implementing technology that can enhance the customer experience and increase agency profitability. Joining me in this effort is another passionate insurance and technology soul, Mr. George Robertson. George, thank you so much for agreeing to be part of this, and I invite you to please share a bit about your background in our industry.
Kitty, as you know, my background is in technology and insurance. I started my career with Data General as a programmer and worked for several technology firms. In 1994, I moved back to my hometown and purchased my father's insurance agency, allowing me the opportunity to combine my knowledge of insurance and technology together. My passion for the insurance industry and technology has provided me with the opportunity to serve on the Agents Council for Technology Executive Board, where I was able to assist in guiding agents, carriers, and MGAs on this ever-changing world of InsurTech. I have also had the opportunity to work with several of the major insurance technology vendors, serving in different roles from sales to business development. As you mentioned, this continues to be a lifelong learning experience.
Thank you, George. And to kick off our InsurTech Talk series, George and I thought we'd start with some fundamentals. One of my favorite quotes comes from a book Michael Jordan wrote back in 1994 entitled, "I Can't Accept Not Trying." In his chapter on fundamentals, he states that the minute you get away from fundamentals, the bottom can fall out. He considers fundamentals the basic building blocks that make everything else work. You can't skip fundamentals if you want to be the best. So looking at some insurance agency operations fundamentals seemed like a good place to start our InsurTech conversation.
I think you're right on that. There is a lot of confusion around the term InsurTech. Tech firms throw the term around like it is some magical thing when by definition it's really pretty simple. The term InsurTech refers to the use of technology innovation to squeeze out the savings and efficiency in the current insurance industry model. Agents share with me all the time how frustrated they are with all these companies creating technology solutions, calling themselves InsurTechs, but never really explaining what the solutions solves for the agents. Agents are busy people, and to convince them to stop what they're doing, which is likely focused on sales and relationship building, to figure out what some technology can do for them is just plain unrealistic. Let's see if we can't review those fundamentals that agents should have in place so they are positioned to make the best decisions around technology for their businesses.
Terrific, and we'll get started with the first fundamental that I'd like to cover, which is know your numbers. By understanding where your agency stands in terms of growth, retention, productivity, and profitability, agency owners can discover opportunities that will point them in the right direction in terms of technology solutions. For example, if you aren't aware of the reports that you can run from your various systems, such as from your management system, your CRM, or a sales system, set out to learn those reports so you can have a consistent process that keeps current and accurate measures in front of you that can help with your decisioning.
Right. Some specific things to measure include new business and organic growth. Where is the new business coming from? Sources of business and the effectiveness of each. Things like referrals, social media, advertising. Retention by premium, policies in force, lines of business, and carrier. Average number of policies and average revenue per account. Closing ratio by producer. And the cost of client acquisition. And I also like to know where I stand compared to others.
And that's a great point. There are numerous tools out there to help with benchmarking so agents can see where they stand compared to similar sized operations in their general geographic area. Tools like the Best Practices Study, Academy of Producers Studies study, Al Diamond, Marsh Berry, and Barand and Associates. These are all firms that can help. Now, the challenge I often see is that owners only take a look at this once in a while. They don't make it part of a regular practice for setting those growth, retention, and profitability goals. Being able to see trends in performance and results definitely gives agencies a leg up. So with that all said, George, what's our next fundamental?
Well, Kitty, I wholeheartedly agree agency owners need to be reviewing their numbers on a monthly basis at minimum. At the same time, there needs to be an awareness of the strengths and weaknesses of the firm.
That's a great one. So anytime we can leverage strengths and improve upon weaknesses, we can be positioned to take advantage of the right technology at the right time for the right reason.
Some of the areas where I see agency owners either assume all is well or they take skill and ability for granted would include technical knowledge of their staff, until, of course, there's an E&O allegation. The efficiencies of policies, procedures, and workflows, including the idea that the current technology is being used effectively to drive down expenses. Understanding carrier contracts, and especially the profit sharing and commission schedule sections. And the importance of agency culture, which can include how the agency approaches sales, service, and relationship building. Looking critically at these items and talking about them with the staff on a regular basis will help to uncover opportunities.
Just to share an example and something we're a little passionate about at Avist, reviewing a new business procedure, for example, and finding ways to reduce the number of touch points during that submission process can ultimately lead to a big reduction in the cost of client acquisition for an agency. Never mind the ancillary benefit of the morale boost for the service team when duplicate and triplicate data entry is reduced or eliminated. So I wholeheartedly agree that it's really impactful to build a team of diverse people and then play to each other's strengths. It's fun to watch employees bring out the best in each other and foster new ideas together. This often opens the door for solid adoption of an InsurTech solution.
So true. We could talk about the idea of culture all day, but let's move on to our third fundamental. Kitty, what do you think?
Well, George, I believe that it's critical to stay aware of what's going on in our industry and in the world at large. This can help agencies position themselves to stay ahead of the curve, whether that's by adopting a data security plan before it's mandated by legislation, or knowing about regional economic development that could negatively impact the agency's commercial book of business. Staying abreast of trends and being aware allows you to be more proactive in changing before you're forced to.
Yes, carving out time to review legislative bulletins from our associations, reading trade press magazines and e-newsletters, keeping abreast of world economic news, and be aware of what's happening with our competition. These are all important things that can impact an agency's growth and success. And you mentioned data security. And boy, is that whole privacy and security concern a big deal for agencies today. All states now have data security legislation requiring businesses to secure personal identifiable information and report data breaches. Just recently, South Carolina enacted the South Carolina Insurance Data Security Act, which requires most agencies to have a written information security plan. In this day and age, I would highly recommend every agency have a written security plan.
Well, speaking of plans, having a plan is actually our fourth fundamental. Just like the data security plan you mentioned and the requirement for it to be written, so should the agency's business strategy. When it's written, it is so much easier to effectively communicate direction across an organization.
Right, Kitty. And as they say, if you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there.
Isn't that the truth? So it's important that agencies know where they are going based on where they are, whether that's adopting a more proactive client contact strategy to increase retention, implementing new technology to improve workflow, or having an education plan for producers so that they can increase sales in new markets. Create a plan, and that plan should include goals, action steps, timelines, and most importantly, how you will celebrate achievements.
Yes, and review it often, right?
You bet. Which leads us to our final fundamental, and where I see agency owners get stuck all the time. It's in executing the plan. What about you, George?
Yes, Kitty, I believe that as agency owners, we need to think Nike and just do it. When you suffer from analysis paralysis, opportunity will pass you by. But it's critical to getting started is monitoring and adjusting as you go along, which takes us back, of course, to fundamental number one, know your numbers.
Yeah, funny how that works, right? As we work on our plan, we're watching for results, and watching those numbers helps us to see how we're doing. So it really is a cycle. But to bring it all back around to InsurTech, what do these fundamentals really matter?
I think the best way to sum it all up is to share the definition of luck. Roman philosopher Seneca reminds us that we make our own luck. He said, luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity.
So as I see it, by taking the time and having the discipline to ensure the 5 fundamentals we discussed are kept top of mind, agency owners are better positioned to make their own luck.
Yes, and when they're doing the activities, they take part and stay aware and come across InsurTech solutions, and they'll be in a much better position, Kitty, to understand which parts of their businesses can be impacted.
So to quickly recap, our 5 fundamentals are, number 1, know your numbers. Number 2, know your strengths and build on them, and acknowledge your weaknesses and address them. Number 3, stay aware of local, regional, and national issues impacting the world around you and your clients. Number 4, have a written business plan. Number 5, execute on that plan and then monitor and adjust accordingly. My hope is that we've given our audience today a few things to think about and to take action on. And as a reminder, you have a handout covering these various points. Let's see if we have some questions from our audience at this point. How do you approach strategic planning? Is it once a year or what? And what do you think, George? What do you do in your agency?
That's a great question, right? So I think, you may have that one time a year where you sit down and look at the results of the prior year and kind of plan for the next year. But I think really that planning piece is an ongoing process of analyzing the information. And as agency owners, I think we need to be looking at that on a monthly basis. Now, you may want to do a quarterly system where you bring in staff and review the quarter and talk about the trends and things that are going on, and then try to make some adjustments to your plan as you go through the year. That'll probably be my solution to that.
Yeah, and I think you're right. You want the overall roadmap for what our priorities are for the year and what we want to accomplish. And, again, thinking back to one of our points around strengths and weaknesses, what things are we going to put in place to build on both, improve the weaknesses and play to the strengths. So monitoring on a regular basis is critical. So I personally think it's kind of a constant thing. But your point about a quarterly check-in is also critical, because we also have to be super agile in our in our environment today. And I like to talk about insurance, the industry being the original disruptor, because it is disruption. Our world is disruption, and that's what we do in our business is deal with disruption. And there's so many things that can impact our direction. So, being mindful of what the roadmap and the plan was, and then constantly kind of being mindful and checking in, and even if it's more structured in a monthly and quarterly fashion is critical. Looks like we have one more question, George.
Okay.
How do you keep up with all of the news these days?
There's a lot of it these days, Kitty.
Gosh.
You get feeds on your phone every day, and you log in, you see all this information coming up, and we have different sources of gathering that data. For me, I like to, read some of the trade mags as they come in during the month, and just kind of get a feed coming in for different places and look at different things. I keep up with the ACT news. ACT has a great little monthly newsletter they send out that I read on a regular basis. What about you?
You are so right about the multitude of information, and I literally try to discipline myself to spend what I call the first morning of the day using or the first hour of the morning of the day using the Stephen Covey principle, which is sharpen the saw. And I do have a bunch of different, feeds that I scroll through and try to grab and look at. There's just so much information out there, and it just takes a little bit of discipline to pay attention. And I tend to use Google alerts for topics I really care about, and
right.
Use hashtags and Twitter to search on things that I really care about. So, things like the Dallas Cowboys and whatnot. But
the important things in life, right?
Yeah, the important things in
right.
life. But no, in all seriousness, it really does take a disciplined approach. And I think the other thing that's kind of interesting is that there's also the purge. Sometimes I just have to sit down and delete everything that's backlogged and start fresh and have a realization that, well, if I need to know, it'll bubble up to the top. So,
yeah,
it's overwhelming. It can be.
That morning time frame when the phones aren't ringing and people aren't in the office, if you get in early and you can just take that time and read through the trade mags or get your feed online, whichever way you like to do that, and just make some notes, see what's happening in the world. I think that's a really great time to accomplish that goal.
Those are all the questions I'm seeing. So, I want to thank everyone for joining us today, and I hope you'll mark your calendar and plan to join us next month, October 15th, when we'll highlight how to successfully implement a new technology solution in your agency. If you have other topics that you would like us to address, please let us know. You can email me or you can email George. Our contact information is on the screen and in your handout. And we welcome your feedback. InsurTech Talk is brought to you by Avast, and for insurance professionals that are seeking to eliminate those inefficient workflows, Avast technology brings together all players in the industry's ecosystem, including agents, brokers, carriers, MGAs, wholesalers, and even other tech firms. The Avast team comprises entrepreneurs, insurance experts, and technology advocates who for years have campaigned to improve the experience for both the insurance professional and the consumer. At Avast, we envision a world where confident insurance professionals deliver an enjoyable customer experience without paper or error. And you can find out more about us by contacting me or visiting avast.com. I also want to say a big thank you to George Robertson of George Robertson Consulting. George is an incredibly knowledgeable resource on insurance technology matters and can be reached directly at grobertson@georgerobertson.com. Again, thank you so much for joining us today. Have a wonderful rest of the week.
Thank you.